What's a galette? Let me show you. Hey, Chef Dez coming at you from my kitchen again. And yeah, we're gonna make a galette. A galette, in case you don't know, is an open-faced pie, but it's made freeform. So the pie shell is on the bottom. You're not using a pie plate at all. You're just free-forming the edges. And it can be savory, it can be sweet. It's whatever you want to do. Today, we're gonna do a nice savory one with goat cheese and tomato and corn. And I call it my tomato and corn galette. And really, it's not that difficult. And man, it is so tasty. Let me show you how to do this. So we're gonna start off with 1.5 cups of grape tomatoes that I've sliced in half, and I slice them lengthwise so it looks better for presentation. What I have here, just to make it a little bit more intense tomato flavor, are oil-packed sun-dried tomatoes. And you can see that they're sliced already. And what I'm gonna do is take this strainer and I'm going to use that oil instead of just draining it off and discarding that oil. We're actually gonna use the oil in the recipe. So make sure that drains really, really well on top of those tomatoes. And we'll just set that aside. And then on those tomatoes as well, we're gonna do a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. Now you can make a galette by just using this filling in the galette, but because we added the vinegar in there, it's going to be too wet and the tomatoes themselves have a lot of moisture. So I wanna cook this off and we're gonna do that right now. So get a non-stick pan, medium-high heat, and then we're gonna place that mixture of tomatoes, the oil from the sun-drieds, and that balsamic vinegar in the pan. And we're gonna let that cook down for about 3 or 4 minutes on medium-high heat. And what you're looking for is for that moisture to be almost gone. We don't want them completely dry, but we don't want it sloshy like this, okay? We wanna cook out some of the flavor of the tomatoes. And what we're basically doing is evaporating the water content from the vinegar, from the tomatoes, and it's just gonna have it more intensely flavored in our galette. So we'll just let that go, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. You'll hear our tomatoes sizzling in the background, but what we're gonna do is prepare the goat cheese filling, okay? So we have 150 grams of soft unripened goat cheese. We're gonna take about 6 large basil leaves. I got this from my plant outside. We got it from a friend of ours. And I'm just gonna roll those basil leaves up just so we don't bruise them and slice them really, really thin. There's my oven preheated, and just rough chop them a little bit after that. And we're gonna take those basil leaves and add it to the goat cheese. Let's have a look at our tomatoes. All right, they're coming along nicely. So just as they're cooking for those 3 or 4 minutes, just toss them around a little bit. You can still see that there's still quite a bit of liquid in the pan, and the liquid's starting to come out of the tomatoes now. Just let that go for a little bit longer. To that goat cheese and basil, we're gonna add 1 large BC egg. Always remember that every single large BC egg has 14 key nutrients, all 9 essential amino acids, 6 grams of the highest quality protein you can get, and 1 egg, it's only 80 calories. But we really need this egg in here to create a binder for the base of this galette. So we're just going to add that to our goat cheese. And to that mixture, we're gonna add a little seasoning, so some salt, and pepper. And we're gonna wanna bring this together. Bust up that goat cheese. It's gonna be a little bit hard, especially if it's cold. And then mix everything very, very well. And we'll just set this aside until we have our pastry ready to go. All right. Let's check on our tomatoes. Now we're there. See that? There's a very little bit of moisture left in the pan, so we're just gonna now turn that off. And then take them out of the pan and just put them back in that original bowl that they were in before. And just take a spatula and get all that nice caramelized goodness out of the pan. Now we gotta do the pie pastry. You could buy a pre-made pie shell from the store, frozen, just thaw it and roll it out. You wanna have about 12 to 13 inch diameter, or you can make our perfect pie pastry, and the recipe is at bcegg.com. And that's what I've done today. So I have 1 portion of that recipe. That recipe for perfect pie pastry makes 4 discs. So it makes 2 double crusted pies or 4 single crusted pies. And you would make 4 portions and roll it out into a disc and put it in the fridge to chill. And that's what we've done here. And we're gonna roll it out and get it prepared for our galette. To make it a little bit easier so it doesn't stick to the counter or to the rolling pin, I have some wax paper here. And I'm just gonna put a little bit of flour on the wax paper. This is a little trick for you to make sure your pastry doesn't get stuck everywhere. And then take it off the plastic wrap and put it there. We're gonna add a little bit more flour on top. Not a lot, just to keep it from sticking. And then put some more wax paper on top. So again, what we're looking for is a 12 to 13 inch diameter, approximately. Don't worry about the edges if they look a little bit misshapen, because we want this to look rustic, our galette. So roll it out best you can. I like to use one of these rolling pins. It's called a French rolling pin because it forces your hands to be on top instead of here. Okay, you don't want pressure here and here, you want pressure here. So it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to shape the dough. I'm just gonna get a ruler and check here. And we're not quite there yet, so I'm gonna keep going. A little bit more. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You want it to look rustic and beautiful. All right, let's get a baking sheet. Remember, we're doing a baking sheet instead of a pie plate. We'll get rid of the wax paper off the top. And we need to transfer this to there. And an easy way of doing it is just taking the wax paper and folding it, and then getting underneath and flipping it onto the baking sheet. I went a little bit too far, but that's okay. And we have our pastry ready to go. If you're making our recipe for Perfect Pie Pastry, you'll realize that it's very tender and it's gonna be very flaky. So you just wanna handle it very carefully. On the base of that pastry, we're going to put the goat cheese filling, and we're gonna leave about 1.5 inches around so we can fold up that pastry. So take your filling and put that on the pastry. And we'll carefully spread it around. Again, leaving that edge all the way around the pastry. And just so you have an even layer. Again, you don't have to fuss with it too much, as long as you have some good coverage and it's as even as you can get it. Looks good. All right, now that we have our base, let's go with our corn. So I have a 1/2 cup of fresh corn kernels. If it's not corn season, then you can do frozen. Just thaw them, blot them really well with a paper towel, and then you'll have the same thing pretty much. And we're gonna take the corn kernels and spread those on evenly on the filling. A little tip for you for presentation is make sure you reserve a few corn kernels at the end to put on the top. I find that if you put the corn kernels on the top of the galette for presentation before it bakes off in the oven, the corn kernels get too dry. So reserving a few for garnish at the end really makes this presentation pop. Then we're going to distribute our sun-dried tomatoes. And again, I buy the ones that are already sliced in the jar in the oil. It makes prep a little bit easier. And then evenly spread our cooked tomato mixture over the top. And making sure you're scraping out all that beautiful goodness out of the bowl. It's easiest to get in with your hands to do this. And you're just going again, just to the edge of the filling, leaving that pastry all the way around the edge for you to fold up, which is gonna be next. A lot of times people will make a fresh tomato galette, but I find there's just too much moisture. Again, this is why we cook the tomatoes a little bit. Not fully, but enough to get some of the moisture out and intensify the tomato flavor. And all we're gonna do now is carefully work our way around with the pastry, bringing it up, crimping it just as necessary, just to give it a little bit more rustic presentation, and folding it up over the edges of our filling and tomatoes and corn. Already it looks so beautiful. Then we need to create a little egg wash. So we're gonna go with another large BC egg, and we're gonna whisk that together with a couple teaspoons of milk. Give that a really good mix. Then a little pastry brush, and we're going to brush onto the pastry of this beautiful galette. This will really help the crust become nice and crispy, have a nice golden color to it. You're not gonna use all the egg wash. Use what you can just to coat the pastry, and then reserve this last bit to put in your omelet or your scrambled eggs tomorrow for breakfast. 1/4 cup of finely grated parmigiano-reggiano. You can do whatever Parmesan cheese you have, but I highly recommend getting a block of parmigiano-reggiano. And I put it on the pastry, but as well as the filling too. Adds incredible flavor and presentation. And then finish with a little bit of flaky sea salt on the crust and the tomatoes, and lots of fresh cracked black pepper. You can see how this is going to enhance the presentation of this galette. In our preheated oven, 400 degrees convection or 425 conventional, we're gonna bake this off until it's golden brown on the edges and golden brown on the underside. Approximately 30 to 35 minutes. It's important for it to get brown on the underside so it'll stay together once you cut it into wedges. All right, let's let her go. All right, there's our timer. Let's have a look. Oh, it looks beautiful. Look at that. All right, like I said before, I reserved a few of the corn kernels that we're just going to use now to carefully garnish with. I just sort of poked them in there a little bit. The residual heat from the dish is going to cook them, but I just want that little glimpse of corn on the top instead of putting it on the top beforehand and getting them all dried out. But look at how beautiful that is. All right, you don't have to be too fussy about it. Just place them wherever. All right. Now the hardest part is waiting to cut this. You need to let this cool on the pan until almost room temperature. Even chill it if you want to. You're gonna wanna make sure it's cooked on the bottom, and what you can do, you can take a sneak peek with a little flipper or something, have a look, or when you take it from the oven, it should slide easily, and that will tell you it's cooked on the bottom as well. And that will be important for when you do cut this into wedges. I cut this into about 6 wedges, so cut it in half, then 3 on each side. And this makes a great appetizer, a brunch item, a side dish. You could even serve this as a main course with a side salad. But you are thoroughly gonna love this tomato and corn galette. Make sure you check out the full recipe at bcegg.com and a whole bunch of other great tips and tricks. And this is Chef Dez, corporate chef of BC Egg, signing out. Where are you getting your protein from?